Captain Kim Day was having his morning coffee at Proxima Station when the alarm started screaming. The sound cut through the usual hum of the space station like a knife. He rushed to the command center, where dozens of officers were staring at their screens with confused faces. "What's going on?" Day asked, pushing through the crowd. Lieutenant Cho Bin turned to him, his face pale. "Sir, you need to see this. Our long-range sensors picked up something impossible." On the main screen, a massive ship was slowly appearing, out of nothing. It looked old, very old, with a design that Day recognized from history books. The ship was huge, easily 3 kilometers long, with the faded letters UES Prometheus painted on its side. "That can't be right," Day whispered. "The Prometheus was lost 200 years ago. The Prometheus was legendary among space travelers. It was one of the first colony ships humanity sent to the stars, carrying 10,000 settlers to establish a new world. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, it had simply vanished. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing. It became one of the greatest mysteries in human history, but now it was back, appearing near Earth's solar system, as if it had never left. The strangest part was how it looked. The ship seemed to flicker, like a bad television signal. Sometimes it was solid and clear, other times it became transparent, as if it wasn't quite there. "Sir, it's broadcasting something," said Officer Park Hee, adjusting her headset. "But these frequencies, they shouldn't exist. Our equipment can barely detect them." Day frowned. "What kind of message?" "That's the weird part. It's not words or voices, it's mathematics. Complex equations that our computers can't even understand. They describe physics that should be impossible." Earth Command tried to contact the ship using normal communication methods. They sent radio, signals, light pulses, even tried old Morse code. For hours, nothing happened. Then suddenly the Prometheus responded, but not with words. Instead, it sent back more mathematical equations, each one more complex than the last. The equations were beautiful and terrifying. They described ways to bend space, to make time flow backward, to exist in multiple places at once. Human scientists had never seen anything like them. It was as if the ship had learned secrets of the universe that humanity couldn't even imagine. Within 6 hours, Earth Command made their decision. They needed someone to investigate this mystery, someone brave enough to approach a ship that defied everything they knew about reality. They chose Captain Kim Day, one of their best officers, known for staying calm in impossible situations. Day was given command of the Stellar Wind, the fastest ship in the human fleet. As he prepared for the mission, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The Prometheus had returned after 2 centuries, but what had it become during those lost years in the dark? The docking process with the Prometheus was unlike anything Captain Kim Day had ever experienced. As the Stellar Wind approached, the ancient ship seemed to pulse within strange energy. The docking clamps struggled to find purchase on a hull that kept shifting between solid and translucent. "Sir, the readings are all wrong," said Engineer Lee So, checking his instruments for the 3rd time. "The ship's mass keeps changing. One moment it weighs 1,000,000 tons, the next it barely registers on our sensors." When they finally made contact, the airlock opened with a hiss that sounded almost musical. Day led his 5-person team through the connecting tunnel, their boots echoing strangely in the metal corridor. The moment they stepped inside the Prometheus, reality seemed to break down around them. The corridor they entered was impossibly long. Day looked back through the airlock and could see the Stellar Wind, but when he looked forward, the hallway stretched on for what seemed like kilometers, far longer than the ship's actual length. "This doesn't make sense," whispered Dr. Jung Ai, the team's scientist. She held up a measuring device that was spinning wildly. "According to my scanner, this corridor is both 50 meters long and infinite at the same time. Gravity was even stranger." As they walked, Day felt his feet stick to what should have been the ceiling. Water from a broken pipe flowed upward, forming spirals in the air before disappearing into the walls. One of his team members, Sergeant Han Sol, tried to jump and found himself floating sideways until he grabbed a handrail. "Stay close together," Day ordered. Though his voice sounded distant and echoed from directions that didn't exist, they moved deeper into the ship, following signs toward the bridge. Along the way, they passed through rooms that defied logic. One chamber was bigger on the inside than the outside, containing what looked like a small forest, growing under artificial sunlight. Another room had walls that showed the depths of space, but when they looked closer, the stars were moving in fast patterns, like time was speeding up. The strangest discovery came when they found the crew quarters. Through transparent doors, they could see people lying in beds, but something was terribly wrong with them. The people were aging rapidly, growing old and wrinkled within seconds, then becoming young again, then aging once more in an endless cycle. "My God," breathed Dr. Young-ai, "they're trapped in some kind of time loop." Finally, they reached the bridge where they found Captain Park Min. At least, Dai thought it was him. The man sitting in the captain's chair looked like he was in his 30s, then 50s, then 20s, shifting between ages as they watched. His voice, when he spoke, seemed to come from multiple times at once. You came," Park Min said, his words overlapping with echoes of himself speaking the same words at different ages. "We've been waiting. Or maybe we haven't been born. Yet time is difficult here." Day approached carefully. "Captain Park Min, you're the commander of the Prometheus." I will be," Min replied, his face flickering between different ages. "We fell through something, a crack in space itself. We spent decades, centuries, moments in a place where your physics don't work, where reality is just a suggestion that no one has to follow." Captain Park Min's face stabilized for a moment, settling into the appearance of a man in his 40s with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. He gestured for Captain Day and his team to sit, though the chairs seemed to adjust themselves to fit each person perfectly without anyone touching them. "You want to know what happened to us out there," Min said, his voice now steady but carrying strange harmonics. "We didn't just get lost, Captain Day. We found something that shouldn't exist, or maybe it found us." Dr. Young-ai leaned forward, her scanner still beeping erratically. "What kind of something?" Min smiled sadly. "We call them the Architects, though that's not their real name. Their real name can't be spoken by human mouths or understood by human minds. They're older than stars, older than galaxies. They gave up having bodies millions of years ago." "Gave up bodies?" Sergeant Hansol asked, looking confused. "Imagine," Min said, standing up and walking to a window that showed swirling colors instead of space, "that you could become pure thought, pure mathematics." That's what they did. They turned themselves into living equations that can reshape reality just by thinking about it. They exist as patterns in the fabric of space and time itself. The bridge around them seemed to pulse gently, as if responding to Min's words. Lights danced along the walls in mathematical sequences, and the air itself hummed with energy. "When we fell through that crack in space, we landed in their realm," Min continued. "A place where the laws of physics are just suggestions, where you can walk through walls by convincing reality that walls don't exist, where you can make water flow upward by politely asking it to change its mind about gravity." Engineer Lee So shook his head. "That's impossible. Everything here is impossible," Min replied with a laugh that echoed strangely. "So look around you. This ship is bigger inside than outside. We have rooms that exist in 17 different dimensions at once. Our engines run on controlled contradictions." He walked to a control panel that seemed to be made of crystallized light. When he touched it, symbols appeared in the air, floating equations that hurt to look at directly. "The Architects took pity on us," Min explained. "We were dying in their realm. Our human bodies couldn't handle existing in a place where reality was optional. So they changed us, gave us gifts. They taught our ship to think in impossible ways, to run on paradoxes that would make your scientists cry." "But why did you come back?" Dee asked, though he felt he already knew the answer would be terrible. Min's expression grew dark, and for a moment, all his different ages seemed to flicker across his face at once. "Because something is coming, Captain. Something that made even the Architects afraid. They called it the devourer of certainties, the thing that eats reality itself." The bridge lights dimmed, and through the strange window they could see distant stars flickering and going out one by one. "The Architects fought this thing eons ago and lost," Min whispered. "It consumed entire dimensions. turned whole universes into nothing more than forgotten dreams. And now it's found our galaxy. Within hours of Captain Park Min's warning, the nightmare began. Emergency signals flooded in from across human space, each one more terrifying than the last. Captain Day watched the reports pile up on his communication screen, his heart sinking with each new message. The first sighting came from the Kepler system, home to 3 million human colonists. Long-range telescopes detected something impossible approaching their star. It wasn't a ship or asteroid, but a massive geometric shape that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. The structure looked like a crystal made of twisted space itself, with edges that curved in directions that shouldn't exist. "Sir, we're getting video feed from Kepler Station," reported Communications Officer Kim Yu, her voice shaking. The main screen flickered to life, showing the impossible structure as it approached the system's star. The thing was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but it moved with purpose and intelligence. As they watched in horror, the star began to dim, not going out like a dying sun, but fading away as if someone was slowly turning down its brightness. "The star isn't being destroyed," Dr. Jung-ae whispered, studying her readings. "It's being removed, like someone is erasing it from reality." Within minutes, the entire Kepler system simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not consumed, but gone as if it had never been there at all. The 3 million people living there didn't die in any way humans could understand. They were simply no longer part of the universe. More reports came flooding in. The structures appeared near a dozen star systems simultaneously. Each one was different in shape, but all shared the same impossible geometry. Some looked like living fractals that breathed with mathematical precision. Others resembled vast machines built from crystallized time itself. Earth Command responded the only way they knew how. Admiral Choi Nam ordered the entire human fleet to converge on the nearest threat, near the industrial world of New Seoul. 200 warships, humanity's finest, prepared for battle against an enemy they couldn't understand. The battle was over, before it truly began. The human fleet fired everything they had at the geometric structure: nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, weapons that could crack planets. Every single shot passed harmlessly through the enemy, as if firing at empty space. "The weapons aren't bouncing off," reported Captain Lee Jun from the flagship. "They're going through it. The thing exists, but our attacks act like it doesn't." The structure ignored the human fleet entirely. It simply continued its work, reaching out with tendrils of twisted space toward New Seoul's sun. As the star began to fade, the structure seemed to grow stronger, more solid, feeding on the very existence of the solar system. "Fall back," Admiral Choi ordered, but it was too late for many ships. As the structure consumed the system's reality, 17 human vessels found themselves caught in the effect. They didn't explode or burn. They simply stopped existing, along with their crews, their histories, and any memory of them except in the minds of those who had escaped. The pattern repeated across human space. The structures, which survivors began calling the Devourers, appeared without warning near inhabited systems. Human weapons couldn't touch them because they existed partially outside normal reality. They consumed entire worlds, not by destroying them, but by unmaking them, erasing them from the very fabric of existence. Within a week, humanity had lost 12 star systems and 40 million people. The military was helpless, their most advanced weapons useless against an enemy that treated the laws of physics as optional suggestions. Earth Command's war room had never seen anything like what Captain Park Min and his crew demonstrated that day. Admiral Choi Nam sat with the highest-ranking military officers, scientists and government officials, all watching in stunned silence as the impossible became routine. Min stood in the center of the room, looking perfectly normal one moment. Then, without warning, he simply stepped sideways and vanished. Not invisible, not hidden behind something, but completely gone from reality. A second later, he appeared behind Admiral Choi, having somehow walked through 3 walls and 2 floors. "Dimensional stepping," Min explained casually, as if he'd just shown them a card trick. "The architects taught us to move between the layers of reality. Space is just a suggestion when you know how to politely disagree with it." Dr. Yoon Ki, Earth's leading physicist, nearly dropped his tablet. That's impossible. You can't just ignore the fundamental structure of space-time. Watch this, said Lieutenant Park Hai, one of Min's crew members. She picked up a broken coffee mug from a table, one that had been shattered beyond repair. Holding the pieces in her hands, she closed her eyes and concentrated. The fragments began to move on their own, flowing back together like water running backward. Within seconds, the mug was whole again, steam rising from fresh coffee that had appeared inside it. Entropy reversal, she explained, though her voice sounded distant, as if coming from very far away. We convinced time to flow backward for this one object. The coffee never spilled, the mug never broke because we asked reality to forget that it happened. The demonstration continued for hours. The Prometheus crew showed how they could make solid walls become permeable by convincing matter to stop, taking itself so seriously. They demonstrated probability manipulation by flipping a coin that landed heads 50 times in a row because they politely requested that chance work in their favor. But as the demonstrations went on, something disturbing became clear. Each time they used their abilities, the crew members seemed to become less human. Lieutenant Park Hai's edges began to blur, as if she wasn't quite solid anymore. Chief Engineer Ko Min started speaking in mathematical equations instead of words, his thoughts becoming too complex for normal language. "What's happening to them?" asked General Lim Bo, leaning forward with concern. Captain Min's face flickered between different ages as he answered. "The price of power, General. Every time we use these abilities, we become a little less human and a little more like the architects. We're turning into living equations, conscious mathematics that can reshape reality at will." Dr. Yoon Ki studied his readings with growing alarm. The cellular structure is changing. Their DNA is becoming something that shouldn't be able to exist. They're transforming into something beyond human biology. "How long do you have?" Admiral Choi asked quietly. Min smiled sadly. "Some of us are already more equation than person. In a few months, maybe a year, we'll be like the architects completely. Pure thought, pure mathematics, existing as patterns. In the fabric of space itself, we'll lose everything that makes us human." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, President Han Do spoke up. "But you can fight the Devourers." "Yes," Min replied. "Only beings who exist partially. Outside reality can fight things that exist partially outside reality. We can match their impossible nature with our own, but, the President prompted. "But it means giving up humanity forever," Min finished. "We need volunteers, people willing to undergo the same transformation we did, people willing to sacrifice their human nature to save the human race." The choice was stark and terrible. Humanity could remain unchanged and face extinction as the Devourers consumed reality itself, or they could sacrifice volunteers to become something beyond. Human, losing their humanity to preserve it. The call for volunteers went out across human space, and the response was overwhelming. Thousands of people from every corner of humanity's domain stepped forward, knowing they might never return as the same beings who left. They came from all walks of life: soldiers, scientists, teachers, engineers, even artists who believed their creativity might help them think in impossible ways. Dr. Lee Na was among the first to arrive at the Prometheus. She was Earth's most brilliant quantum physicist, a woman who had spent her entire career trying to understand the mysteries of reality. Now she was volunteering to become something beyond human understanding. "I've studied the universe my whole life," she told Captain Min as she prepared for the transformation chamber. "If I'm going to lose my humanity, at least let me use it to understand what we're becoming." The transformation chamber was a room that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. It looked like a simple medical bay to human eyes, but instruments detected impossible energies swirling through spaces that folded in on themselves. The walls were covered in equations that seemed to move and change when no one was looking directly at them. Li Na lay on a table that felt solid but looked translucent. As the process began, her screams echoed not just through the ship, but through dimensions that humans couldn't perceive. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was reshaping her mind, her consciousness, her very understanding of existence. "Her brain patterns are changing," reported Dr. Young-A, monitoring from outside the chamber. The neural pathways are restructuring themselves into patterns that shouldn't be possible. She's thinking in 12 dimensions simultaneously. For 3 days, Li Na existed in a state between human and something else. Sometimes she appeared solid and normal. Other times she flickered like a broken hologram, her body trying to exist in multiple states of reality at once. She spoke in fragments, mixing human words with mathematical concepts that had no human equivalent. When the transformation finally completed, the woman who emerged was both Li Na and something entirely new. She looked human at first glance, but her eyes held depth that seemed to go on forever. When she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her, as if space itself was making room for her presence. "I can see everything," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. 12 layers of reality, all existing at the same time. Time isn't a line, it's a spiral. Space isn't empty, it's alive, with possibilities. Li Na became the first teacher of impossible thinking. She established training protocols that pushed human minds beyond their natural limits. Students learned to think in paradoxes, to hold contradictory ideas as simultaneously true. They practiced weaponizing impossibility itself, learning to create bullets made of crystallized uncertainty and shields built from organized chaos. The training was brutal. Of the first 100 volunteers, only 37 survived the transformation process. Some simply faded away, their minds unable to handle existence across multiple dimensions. Others became lost between realities, trapped in spaces that existed only in their own consciousness. But those who survived became something magnificent and terrible. They could step between dimensions like walking through doorways. They could reverse cause and effect, making results happen before their causes. They learned to exist in multiple states simultaneously, being both alive and not alive, present and absent, human and something far beyond human understanding. Each successful transformation created another guardian, another being capable of fighting enemies that existed partially outside reality itself. They were humanity's new defenders, but the price was everything that had once made them human. The transport ships arrived at the Prometheus like a steady stream of hope and desperation. Each one carried volunteers who had said goodbye to their families, knowing they might never see them again as the same people who left. The docking bays filled with people from every corner of human space, young soldiers with fire in their eyes, middle-aged scientists driven by curiosity, even elderly teachers who wanted to contribute one last time to humanity's survival. Dr. Li Na stood among the first group, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at the transformation chamber. She was 42 years old, had 2 children back on Earth, and was considered one of the smartest people alive. None of that would matter in a few hours. "Are you sure about this?" asked her colleague, Dr. Park Sung, who had come to see her. "Hoff? No," Li Na replied honestly. "But I'm sure about what happens if we don't try." The transformation chamber looked deceptively simple, like a medical scanner from any hospital, but the walls hummed with energy that made people's teeth ache, and the air itself seemed thick with possibilities. Equations floated in the air like living things, changing and evolving as they watched. Li Na climbed onto the table, which felt warm and somehow alive under her touch. As the process began, her world exploded into sensation beyond human description. It wasn't just pain, though there was agony beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Her mind was being stretched, pulled, reshaped, to perceive things that human brains were never meant to understand. "Her vital signs are impossible," reported the medical team. "Her brain is showing activity in areas that don't exist. Her DNA is rewriting itself in real time." For 72 hours, Li Na existed in a nightmare of transformation. Sometimes she could see her worried colleagues around her. Other times she was floating in spaces between dimensions, learning to think thoughts that had no human words. She experienced colors that didn't exist, heard music made from the vibration of space-time itself. When it was over, the woman who opened her eyes was still Li Na, but also something infinitely more. She sat up slowly, and reality seemed to ripple around her like water. When she looked at the people watching her, she saw not just their faces, but their thoughts, their fears, their hopes existing as visible patterns in 12 different dimensions. "I can see the math behind everything," she whispered, her voice carrying strange echoes. "The equations that make atoms dance, the formulas that tell stars how to shine. Reality is just organized numbers." Li Na became their first teacher of impossible thinking. She set up training rooms where volunteers learned to break their minds free from normal thinking. Students practiced holding two opposite ideas at the same time until both became true. They learned to think backwards through time, to imagine effects that came before their causes. "Don't think of this wall as solid," she would tell them, pointing to what looked like ordinary metal. "Think of it as a very strong suggestion. Then politely disagree with that suggestion." The training was heartbreaking to watch. Many volunteers couldn't handle the mental strain. Some simply vanished during exercises, their minds scattered across dimensions they couldn't navigate back from. Others went insane, their consciousness unable to process existence in 12 dimensions simultaneously. But those who survived became something extraordinary. They could walk through walls by convincing matter to temporarily forget how to be solid. They learned to create weapons from pure impossibility, bullets that hit targets by refusing to miss, shields made from crystallized denial of reality itself. Each successful transformation created another guardian, capable of fighting the unthinkable. The first real battle against the Devourers began near the mining colony of New Busan, where one of the geometric horrors had appeared to consume another star system. This time humanity had defenders who could fight back on the enemy's own impossible terms. Captain Kim Dae led the assault, though he was barely human anymore. The partial transformation had left him able to see in 7 dimensions, while still maintaining enough humanity to remember why he was fighting. His body flickered between solid and translucent as he prepared for combat that would occur across multiple layers of reality simultaneously. "Remember," Dr. Li Na's voice echoed through their minds across dimensional barriers, "these things exist by unmaking reality. We fight them by making reality stronger, more insistent about existing." The transformed humans approached the Devourer not in ships, but by stepping between dimensions. They moved through spaces that didn't exist, traveling through the gaps between atoms, through the pause between heartbeats, through the silence between thoughts. The battle began in 17 different dimensions at once. To normal human eyes, watching from distant observation posts, it looked like chaos. Explosions of light appeared in empty space, followed by darkness that seemed to eat the stars themselves. But the transformed warriors were fighting a war that spanned every layer of existence. Officer Cho Bin, now more equation than human, created a pocket of reversed time around one section of the Devourer. Within that bubble, entropy flowed backward. The creature's attempts to unmake reality were undone, its destructive work reversed second by second. But maintaining the time reversal cost Cho Bin part of his remaining humanity. His body became more translucent, his thoughts more mathematical. Engineer. Li So took a different approach. He created a small universe around himself where the laws of physics worked differently. In his personal reality, his weapons fired bullets made of crystallized certainty, each shot insisting that the target must exist, must be solid, must be vulnerable. The Devourer writhed as these impossible bullets forced it to become more real, more present in normal space where it could be hurt. The most devastating attack came from Captain Dae himself. He phased through 17 dimensions simultaneously, approaching the Devourer from angles that didn't exist in normal geometry. His weapon was pure impossibility, a gun that fired concentrated paradoxes. Each shot created a small explosion of contradictory reality that forced the creature to choose between existing and not existing. "It's working," shouted Dr. Park Sung from the observation ship. "The Devourer is retreating." But the victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 20 transformed humans who entered the battle, only 14 remained afterward. The others hadn't died in any normal sense. They had become too mathematical, too much like living equations, and had dissolved into the fabric of reality itself. They still existed somewhere as patterns in the quantum foam, but they were no longer individuals that could be talked to or remembered as people. Those who survived were changed further by the battle. Captain Day could now barely maintain a solid form for more than a few minutes at a time. His voice came from multiple dimensions at once, making him difficult to understand. Engineer Lee. So had to concentrate, just to remember what it felt like. To be human, his memories of his old life fading like dreams. But they had proven something crucial. The Devourers could be fought. Across human space, more battles followed the same pattern. The transformed defenders would engage the geometric horrors in multi-dimensional combat, using weapons of pure impossibility and tactics that defied understanding. Each victory saved a star system, but cost humanity more of its transformed guardians. The war had truly begun, fought by beings who were no longer quite human, defending a species they could barely remember being part of. Captain Park Min's consciousness had expanded so far beyond human understanding that he existed simultaneously in hundreds of dimensions. While his transformed allies fought battles across space, he had been exploring deeper mysteries, following mathematical pathways that led to terrifying truths about the nature of reality itself. The revelation came to him like a cold shock through every layer of existence. He saw the pattern now, the cosmic damage that allowed the Devourers to enter their universe in the first place. Reality had cracks in it, tiny fractures in the fabric of space-time that had been growing for billions of years. These weren't natural flaws, but scars left behind by ancient wars between beings like the architects. "I need to speak with everyone," Min announced, his voice reaching the transformed humans no matter where they were in the galaxy. "What I've discovered, it changes everything." They gathered in a space that existed between dimensions, a meeting place that was neither here nor there. Captain Day flickered into existence first, his form barely holding together after the latest battle. Dr. Lee Na appeared next, her body now more mathematical formula than flesh. One by one, the remaining defenders materialized, each one less human than before. "The Devourers aren't invaders," Min began, his words carrying the weight of cosmic truth. "They're a symptom. They're drawn to universes where reality has been weakened, where the boundaries between existence and non-existence have been damaged." Engineer Lee. So, now speaking in equations that somehow conveyed meaning, asked the question they all dreaded. "How do we fix it?" Min's form shimmered with sadness that spanned multiple dimensions. "The cracks can be sealed, but only from the outside. Someone has to exist in the spaces between realities, using their consciousness as living patches over the damaged areas. They would become eternal guardians, preventing any future incursions. The implications hit them like a physical blow. To seal the cracks, they would have to position themselves in the void between dimensions permanently. They would exist outside normal reality forever, unable to return to the universe they were saving, unable to contact the people they loved. "How many?" Dr. Lee Na asked, though her expanded consciousness already knew the answer. "All of us," Min replied quietly. "Every transformed human would need to take their place as a guardian. We'd be scattered across the dimensional barriers, each one holding a section of reality together through pure will and sacrifice." Captain Day's form solidified briefly, showing the ghost of the man he used to be. "We'd never see our families again, never touch solid ground, never breathe real air, never be human again in any way that matters. But humanity would survive," Min said. "The universe would be safe. The Devourers would be locked out forever, unable to find the cracks that let them in. The transformed humans fell silent, each one processing the magnitude of the choice before them. They had already given up their humanity to become defenders. Now they were being asked to give up existence itself, to become eternal exiles in the spaces between realities. Officer Cho Bin, whose form was now more light than matter, spoke first. "I had a daughter. She'll grow up, have children of her own, live a full life because of what we do here. That has to be enough." One by one they made their choice. Each transformed human accepted the role of eternal guardian, knowing they would spend eternity alone, in the dimensional void, holding reality together through sheer force of will. They would save everyone they loved by giving up any chance of ever seeing them again. The ultimate sacrifice wasn't death. It was something far more profound, choosing to exist forever in service to others, with no hope of reward, recognition, or return. The final battle didn't take place on any battlefield that normal humans could see. It happened in the spaces between atoms, in the pauses between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats. The transformed defenders spread themselves across 17 dimensions, each one taking position at the fractures in reality itself. Captain Park Min coordinated the impossible operation, his consciousness stretched across cosmic distances. Remember, his voice echoed through dimensions, we're not just sealing the cracks, we're becoming the seals ourselves. Once we take our positions, there's no coming back. Captain Day was the first to reach his assigned fracture, a tear in space-time near the galactic core that had been bleeding unreality for millions of years. As he approached it, he could feel the void pulling at him, trying to drag him into non-existence. Fighting against the pull, he positioned himself directly over the crack and began the transformation into a living seal. His body dissolved, but his consciousness expanded, becoming a bridge across the dimensional gap. He felt himself stretching, his awareness becoming thin and vast, covering the fracture like a bandage made of pure will. The pain was indescribable, but so was the satisfaction of feeling the crack begin to heal. Dr. Lee Na took her position at a fracture near Earth's solar system. As she transformed into a dimensional seal, she sent one last message to her children, though she knew they would never receive it in any way they could understand. I love you both. Live good lives. Be happy. Then, her individual consciousness merged with the fabric of reality itself, becoming an eternal guardian, watching over the space she had once called home. One by one, the transformed humans took their positions. Engineer Lee so sealed a crack near the mining worlds. Officer Cho Bin positioned himself over a fracture in the outer rim. Each transformation was agony and transcendence combined, as they gave up their individual existence to become part of the universe's immune system. The effect was immediate and devastating to the Devourers. As the crack sealed, the geometric horrors found themselves cut off from their source of power. They had fed on the bleeding unreality that seeped through the fractures. Now, with their food source gone, they began to weaken and fade. The largest, Devourer, the one that had consumed 12 star systems, writhed in what might have been pain as it found itself trapped in normal reality with no way to escape. Unable to exist fully in a universe with consistent physical laws, it collapsed in on itself and vanished, taking with it the unmaking effect that had erased so many worlds. Across the galaxy, the remaining Devourers suffered the same fate. Cut off from the dimensional cracks that had allowed them to partially exist outside reality, they were forced to choose between existing and not existing. Unable to handle that paradox, they simply ceased. The transformation was complete. Reality was whole again, protected by guardians who existed in the spaces between dimensions. Captain Min was the last to take his position, sealing the final crack and completing the barrier that would protect the universe forever. On Earth, people looked up at the stars and felt a strange sense of peace they couldn't explain. Children played in parks while their parents worked and worried about normal human problems. None of them knew that they were protected by heroes who had given up everything human about themselves to ensure humanity's survival. Dr. Park Sung, one of the few who remembered the transformed defenders, established a small memorial on Earth. It was just a simple stone with words that read, "To those who became more than humans so that humanity could continue." The transformed guardians watched from beyond perception, forever changed, forever vigilant, forever protecting the species they could barely remember being part of. They had transcended humanity to save it, existing as eternal sentinels in the void between realities. Humanity was safe, but the price of that safety was carried by heroes no one would ever see again.